Okay, John, we talked in part one about horse racing and maybe that gambling, it makes it a bit more difficult to promote. Do you think horse racing generally does a good job in selling itself across the population?
Across the population, I think the iconic events do. I think the Investec Derby, your Royal Ascots, your Goodwoods do a brilliant job at promoting themselves because they are the best events. Cheltenham Festival, the Grand National, people want to go and see the best horses and the best jockeys in action. So I think, of course, racing could do a better job at promoting itself. But I think it's very naive for a lot of horsemen to think that racing can just jump off the racing pages into the news headlines without, a lot of thought going into the sort of campaigns. There's a reason why for the Derby we work with ambassadors from outside the sport because, it means we're on the front pages of Stella magazine or the Sunday Times magazine, things like that. Those publications which Investec want to be in, they don't want to be in, they're targeting a very specific audience. I think the jump racing fraternity probably do a better job than the flat sometimes in terms of, the horses also are around for a lot longer, so people become, they have that love affairs with your Altiors, your Sprinter Sacras, your best mates are, they love following those horses. And you also have, these fantastic characters like Bryony Frost coming through. But definitely the biggest, flat racing has the biggest marketing tool in Frankie Dettori, and probably Her Majesty the Queen and her patronage of the sport are two massive assets.
Now, I did a little bit of research online. I've often found, just from a personal point of view, that non-racing people, that's what I do for a job, they either think that it's supported by people that sit around recycling their dough money in betting shops, or it's the toffs, in inverted commas, and not a lot in between. That's the perception. I did a poll on Twitter. We had about 800 people, sort of took part in it, but 70% agreed with that. The perception of non-racing people is, do you think that is a problem? Do you agree that that is the perception of the general public?
Yes, I guess if you're looking at from the outside window in, you're looking at very rich people owning racehorses. But as I know from working it, there are syndicates like Highclere and Chelsea Thoroughbreds and racehorse ownership schemes that actually make it very affordable to have shares in racehorses. And one of the things I adore about racing is the huge cross-section of people you meet from society. From everyone to people who are looking at the stable staff, looking after the horses, to the owners, the trainers, the jockeys, the sponsors, the racecourse staff. I mean, it's a massive industry. So that may be the perception, but I think racing gets such a good show in terms of the daily coverage at the moment, although it is in decline a bit. It does sort of cross the whole of society, and from the red tops to the broadsheets, doesn't it?
Yeah, I was just thinking, it is the second largest viewed sport in the UK, but if people that aren't involved looking in from outside, they can't really aspire to be a toff because they aren't born into that sort of thing, and they don't really want to aspire to be one of those people in the betting shops. What could as a PR company, what would you try and, how would you try and engage those people that think like that they're basically alienating themselves by their perception of the sport?
Well, again, one of the great things about racing is there's loads of different entry points, isn't there? There's lots of different career options. You can basically cherry pick your way into the different interests you have, whether that's working in the industry, but also from a simple race day perspective. You can pick which enclosure you go into. You can pick if you want to go for a meal on a race course or just keep it, for a day out on the hooves, so to speak. with a group of mates. You can go, I think the great thing is you can go on a stag do or with a group of friends or with your family, or take a team of clients, and it's all different experiences and different locations on the racecourse.
Yeah. Okay, so how does promoting cricket, rugby and other sports compare to racing, and do they appear to straddle the social spectrum a lot better than racing?
I think cricket's done, although I'm a huge fan of Test cricket, I think what they've done with 2020 cricket is really, engage with that younger audience. And I think racing has a big job to do in embracing new ideas like city racing. Obviously I'm involved in it, so I'm a bit biased, but I think it will really help engage more and younger people into the sport. And the closer you can take people to the action now, people want to be right up close and personal. They don't want to be 200 yards back from the action. Their expectations are so much higher nowadays.
Now, you mentioned city racing. Can you briefly tell us what your involvement is with that project?
Well, I've been involved for quite a number of years, about 8, and we basically handle all the PR and communications for city racing, as well as being a shareholder in it. And I'm very excited about it. I think it's a massively exciting new initiative for racing, and I really hope we can get our first event off the ground as soon as possible.
Okay, and just going back to the nuts and bolts of your business, hypothetically, what would be your dream commission? What would be something you'd love to get your teeth into that you've not yet been able to?
I would love to look after the sponsorship activation of something like the Six Nations, or the Ashes cricket, one of those big, really iconic sporting occasions. I think it would be fantastic to be involved with.
Now, you probably haven't got long enough to explain this, but briefly, what would be the process from you getting the job to it actually taking place? How many people are involved?
Well, a client tends to go through a pitch process, so say 4 or 5 different agencies would be sent a PR brief, and then usually we would have about 2 weeks to brainstorm ideas, put together a presentation, and then go and present it to the prospective client. And I guess creativity, coming up with the most sort of creative ideas is pretty most of the time where you get the new business from. It's trying new things, trying particularly nowadays the digital, really focusing on that as well. And race courses they do have such a big cross section of people who go racing. It's almost targeting those different groups with different ideas.
Okay, now you've mentioned online and digital quite a lot already.
Yeah.
Has that become dominant now?
Yeah, massively dominant. Social media channels are, it's instant gratification, as you said earlier. It's live action, being up close and personal. People expect to be able to chat to the stars of the sport, and I think they are the jockeys, as a rule, are really good at engaging when they're at the races. Obviously if they've just fallen off at the last, it's probably not the best time to go and talk to them, but overall they are, they're really good at it.
Now, what would you say is your most powerful online publicity tool in your armoury for getting the word out there?
I would say our database, our media databases are second to none. I think we've got pretty much we basically section them into the different sports, and then have a main one for sort of more general, bigger stories. And obviously the press of a button, basically we can reach a huge amount of heads.
Mm. Now, that's something we should be getting. What are the biggest obstacles and pitfalls you face as a PR company with a campaign?
I think sometimes you can be very unlucky. Obviously, there are events that you have no control of. If you're making an announcement about a new sponsorship or trying to announce a new initiative that a racecourse introducing, and a big story breaks, you know, an hour later, then you know full well you're going to be lucky to get an inch of copy. Whereas if the big story hadn't broken, you probably get a nice, you know, couple of paragraphs. So I think it's sometimes out of your control, but usually as long as the story is newsworthy, it tends to get the column inches.
Are you also in the damage limitation business? You get a client ring up and say, "Oh no, something terrible's going on," you know, and you have to try and smooth it over. Is that part of the job as well?
Yeah. No, we have crisis management PR, we call that, and that can be anything really, from reputational stuff to the IRA. We had a coded where we had to evacuate Kempton on Boxing Day one year after a coded bomb warning. You know, there's a huge spread of things really.
Okay, John, can you tell us the jobs that you've been commissioned to do that you've been most proud of so far?
I think, well, there's been a number, what I would call, we've had some really good successes for clients. I think getting the zebra on the sacred turf at Lords was, when we launched the Investec sponsorship, was probably our biggest coup. It got front page of the Times and Telegraph, and a number of other publications. The logo on Cleve Hill was pretty good. But there's been lots of, I mean, we've worked. It's also the sort of satisfaction. We run a lot of events. We ran our first motor neurone disease event last year, which was Strictly Come Cricket for Chris and Stuart Broad. And you know, the first year it raised over 220,000. So there's huge satisfaction, you know, because it's probably over a year's worth of planning and hard work, and then when it does, you raise all that money for charity. It's a really magic feeling.
And on the negative side, have there been any absolute disasters?
No, I don't think we've had. Nothing springs to mind, touch wood.
Now, you mentioned two of racing's what you describe them as influencers, the Queen and Frankie Dettori. Are there any up and coming young influencers as important in racing as they are in a lot of other, especially with the young people? You know, are there any that are up and coming that you think could go across to the general public and bring people in at the moment?
I think Bryony Frost, without a shadow of a doubt, from a jumps perspective. I mean, we represent her and the media interest outside the sport. I mean, I judge it basically if you suddenly, you know, after Froden won the other day and now, you know, he's going for the Gold Cup, you know, we're inundated with media requests on a daily basis for her. And one of the problems is it's obviously she's got a full-time job, she works for Paul Nicholls, and quite rightly that is her absolute commitment, and that's what she wants to be doing, is riding horses. So sometimes it's quite hard to find the balance, you know, and her making time to do these sort of media interviews. But for example, next week she's spending the whole day literally just back to back doing media interviews with the likes of the BBC and Reuters, and you know, really, which is fantastic for racing. Okay,
now who do you think? Going back to Bryony, you say you represent her. So was that basically working as an agent for people? Who else do you represent?
Yeah, so we look after a number of trainers and jockeys and presenters, from Gina Bryce to Alice Fox-Pitt, presenter-wise. Jockeys, we look after Nicola Curry, Josephine Gordon, Hayley Turner, Bryony, Ryan Moore, Paul Nicholls, Nicky Henderson, Jason Watson, we've just taken on, the Champion Apprentice, Nico de Boinville. So we've got quite a big stable of trainers and jockeys, and basically we manage their commercial interests, and then help a bit with the sort of PR side. Also, you know, the likes of Hugo Palmer, and trying to find them sponsors like Paul Roger, who sponsor his yard, and working with them to make that sponsorship gel for both parties.
Right, so you umbrella quite a lot with this business. You sort of deal with quite a few aspects.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
So who do you think is the best promoter of themselves as a person or a company in the betting industry? Who do you look at and think, oh, you do a good job of that?
Paddy Power, I think, are very good. They're very impressive. I think because they're just very creative. They've obviously got a very good ad team and marketing team, and they make a difference. They get recognised massively, both from an internal industry perspective, but also, outside the bookmaking world as well.
Yeah, they take a lot of gambles, don't they?
Absolutely, yeah, they do.
Are they in-house, their PR team?
I think so, yeah, yeah.
Okay, and then finally, what would you say are the golden rules for people in businesses who are looking to push themselves forward in this day and age? How do you think what's the best way of doing it without putting yourself out of a job?
Yeah. Well, I think it's being you. It's being genuine. And I think it's work hard, play hard scenario is always a good one, a good guide to go down. That sort of work-life balance is very important.
Okay, and that's the secret to success.
Well, I don't know about that. But
JOHNNO Spence, thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Cheers.